So the Rey movie is now facing cancellation behind the scenes over at Lucasfilm and the Walt Disney Company for several reasons out there. It's not just limited to the fact that main writer Steven Knight stepped down from this project, and we're going to be going over exactly what happened there over at Lucasfilm HQ, and exactly how Bob Iger, by the way, was also very much involved in that process. But what's interesting here has a lot more to do with Kathleen Kennedy's frustration, her overall stance on the entire issue going on right now with this Rey Skywalker movie, quote-unquote. That's what they're calling it, by the way. And we already know that Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, the director of this film, is not happy about this development one bit. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You could also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So we already know that Kathleen Kennedy is and has been very frustrated about this year, 2024, being very disastrous for her overall so-called reputation. The Acolyte was one of the biggest failures under Disney's wing ever since 2012. I would definitely go as far to say that it is worse than The Last Jedi ever was, while it was in theaters and after it actually came out on to Blu-ray. It is universally rejected, always has been, always will be in my book, and when you look at a movie like this, alright, the Rey Skywalker film, this is basically Star Wars Episode 10 without calling it Star Wars Episode 10, let's be real. But focusing on what's been going on with all of this is where things begin to get even more serious behind the scenes over at Lucasfilm. And what's been going on with Kathleen Kennedy's overall attitude, her behavior, her overall way of working at Lucasfilm now, since this project is falling apart nearly every single week. A new development is coming out for this actual project. Now, with the Disney executives now in a serious state of panic over one of their divisions, such as Lucasfilm, as the Rey movie begins to fall apart, one monumental development involves more to do with Kennedy's reaction toward the Rey movie drama, and how writer Steven Knight recently left the project, which is going to delay this film indefinitely until another writer signs on. Now, Kennedy recently had yet another in-studio battle with Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, after he was not fully, of course, providing the proper funds and cost-cutting funds for the Rey movie, but also made specific demands for changes that Kennedy disagreed with. These changes, as it turns out, shockingly, are ones that writer Steven Knight had pitched months ago that Kennedy shot down. And that actually included how the writer of the Rey film wanted to bring back the Skywalkers in some way, shape, or form to hold a very important role in the final act of the film as Force ghosts. Kennedy refused to allow that to happen at all, as she wanted to completely shift from the Skywalkers and wanted nothing to do with either Luke, Ben, Leia, or more. These back and forth arguments between Kennedy and Steven Knight are ultimately what led to Steven having a very tough time creating the proper ending for the film, and also struggles with the rewrites, and Kennedy was giving him an unfair deadline that would have caused him to rush the process. Steven Knight reportedly took this up with the Disney CEO, along with the executives, about his plans to leave the project, and Kennedy had an all-out outrage moment behind the scenes, where she got very emotional and at times heated in specific remote meetings that rattled within the Walt Disney Company, since Kennedy views this project, get this, as her dream project that she wanted to put on the big screen. Kennedy also has major problems with Bob Iger cost-cutting the Rey movie and the budget surrounding it, which also prevented their plans of developing specific set designs that were planned to be built by early next year, which are now no longer happening at all, and Kennedy had a very argumentative conversation with Bob Iger as the main cause of destroying this project and its planned format. As of now, the Disney executives, along with Daisy Ridley, the lead actress in the film who plays Rey, are reportedly fully aware that this project is already seriously flawed and facing cancellation within months if no writer is able to sign on to take over Steven Knight's work by the end of this year. Now, you guys may recall, before I move on, before Steven Knight, we had David Lindelof, who was working on this film. He stepped down. Now you got Steven Knight backing out of the project, alright, once, now twice. Then you kind of begin to wonder to yourself, what's going on here with this project? You have one writer leaving, you have another writer leaving, and now they're having a very tough time finding somebody proper to either patch what Steven did not finish, or to quite possibly redo in the entire movie. And that's something that has been discussed between the Disney executives on potentially indefinitely delaying the Rey film, completely rewriting the script, and just release this at some point in time in the late 2020s. You know what? I think it's a better move to just cancel this thing outright, don't make it ever a thing into existence, and focus perhaps on a better, more grounded Star Wars film that would fit with actual fans. But look, I've said this more times than ever. This actual franchise, as far as I see things, the damage is irreversible. And if you're going to fix any kind of damage, I think that you have to prove yourself time and time again for at least 3 years. You know, consistently with successful projects and success points. Now, on top of this, Kennedy already is reportedly begging the Disney heads to rehire Leslye Headland to bring her on to handle the writing process of what she calls a female-led Star Wars film, this one, of course, being the Rey movie. However, Disney executives fully refused to bring back Headland for this project. Already multiple board members are calling for Iger to axe this actual movie altogether to remove any level of frustration internally, as the studio and those at Lucasfilm working on the project. The budget for the Rey film was reportedly to be around, get this, $250 million, that has now been slashed down to $180 million, which Kennedy views as catastrophic to the scenes written in the script that need to be filmed in expensive areas with expensive sets. So that's another thing here, is that they slashed the budget of this project. Kennedy was not happy about that one bit. It caused a lot of in-studio battles between herself, the Disney executives. Some of those calls, by the way, happened before Stephen Knight left. Some of those calls also happened, but actually after he had left just recently, where the budget just kept going down and down and down. And I would not be too shocked if it goes below 180 million, like maybe around 140, 150 at the minimum. But at the same exact time, nobody was asking for a project like this, especially doing it in a very cheap way, right? Like I said earlier in this video, this is literally Star Wars Episode 10 without calling it Episode 10. You have this Rey movie, which, by the way, is set 15 years, and that is a fact. This is confirmed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy and Kathleen Kennedy. It's set 15 years after the events of The Rise of Skywalker, so it takes place over a decade and a half, after the final sequel trilogy movie, and that was basically Kathleen Kennedy's way of justifying, well, we don't need to bring back any more Skywalkers. Well, where's the logic there when you came back with the sequels that took place decades later after the Return of the Jedi film, and you had Luke, you had Leia, you know, there's no excuse to not include them as Force ghosts, and that was a major problem with Stephen Knight. And we actually talked about this very, very lightly, like about 3 months ago, when this was really beginning to brew. But overall, I think that we all saw this coming. I called this, you know, months and months ago. I think that everybody saw this coming, that this movie would eventually either A, get delayed due to creative differences, financial differences, or just showing that there's a lack of demand over this film after the biggest failure in the world under Lucasfilm, the Acolyte series. And we already talked about that. The Acolyte was one of the major players as to why the Rey movie took a hit as well. So I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.